All right. Hey, good morning, folks. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Today is Monday, June 19th, 2023. This is your morning tropical update, where we are now tracking newly formed Tropical Depression 3 in the Central Atlantic Basin, along with another wave following Tropical Depression 3 in what has become a early season African wave train that no one really ever thought would happen because this is very unusual for this time of year. So most of today's video is going to be on TD3, but I want to reiterate the current overall look in the tropics is very unusual for the month of June. We have these multiple waves leaving Africa, and TD3 is right about here today, and then you have Invest 93L following TD3. And we don't hardly ever see this in the month of June. June is typically characterized with very quiet conditions. Any storms that do form are usually close to the coast. They usually form off the coast of the Carolinas or in the Gulf of Mexico or the Western Caribbean. We almost never see storms forming out here as if it was August or September. But we have a very unusual pattern over the tropics. We have very light wind shear. We have unusually warm waters, as in record warm waters. And there's almost no Saharan dust to help suppress these storms. So we have this African wave train that is just picked up in the month of June. So despite the El Nino talk and the conditions and the talk of a quieter season, the Atlantic Basin didn't seem to get the email, and we already have our third named storm of the season on hand here. So most of our video today is going to be on Tropical Depression 3, but we'll also briefly note that 93L is following TD3, also moving to the northwest. You can see here on the 7-day outlook from the Hurricane Center, and this will also be something we'll watch. I think this one has a better chance to just kind of recurve out to sea, but we're not going to count the chickens before they hatch, and we're not going to worry about this today, but it does have a 40% chance to develop in the next week or so. So let's go to the newly formed TD3 first forecast from the Hurricane Center. 11 a.m. advisory, maximum sustained winds 35 miles an hour, and our system is moving to the west at a brisk 21 miles per hour. Again, this is a very unusual place to see a storm in the month of June. The last time we saw this was, ironically, Tropical Storm Bret on June 19th, 2017, the last time that this naming list was used. And it looks like this version of Bret is going to lose by 3 hours to its compatriot for the earliest forming tropical storm, named tropical storm on record in the MDR in the month of June, or earliest we've seen, period. So, very unusual situation. The first Hurricane Center forecast is pretty vanilla. It is just a general cone to the west northwest. Of note, they do have this becoming a hurricane by Wednesday evening, which is a little spicy. But otherwise, they basically have noted that the forecast is essentially fairly low confidence, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one being the time of year, very unusual. Um, but we also have the trough coming in that we're going to talk about in a second. So let's go ahead and look at just the general presentation real quick of Bret. Looks a lot better today, or TD3, soon to be Bret. I think this will be a tropical storm by 5 p.m. So we're going to call it Bret for the rest of the videos. I'm sick of using different names. So we have what looks like almost Bret here. Much better looking today. Central dense overcast now starting to form up. Those thunderstorms getting more compact around that early primitive center there. Definitely not a sharp wave axis anymore. It looks like a closed low to me, given the inflow of the clouds around the system and the fact that the thunderstorms are anchoring better and more robust. It definitely looks healthy. It's kind of small, but it does look pretty good for what it looks like. Outflow is improving to the north a little bit. Still doesn't have hardly any southerly outflow, which is still curious. But that is kind of to be expected this time of year in the MDR. Even if it looks good overall, it's still kind of a hard place to get storms this time of year. So even though the conditions are about as good as they can be in June, Bret is not sitting in this perfect environment, but it's got a pretty good one. The moisture's there, the wind shear's light enough. It's going to have enough to get going. Let's look at the future of Bret. We're going to go over to Thursday morning on two different models, GFS and European model. We're looking at the upper levels to give you the general idea of the steering flow, what might be influencing these storms. As we talked about in the previous video, we're going to have this high pressure blocking the way of Bret over the north of the Caribbean islands. This is all part of a large omega block over the eastern U.S., flanked by a low pressure over the central eastern U.S. and a sharp trough over the Atlantic Basin. Now, this trough over here to the right is what was coming to get Bret. And this could still take Bret up and out to sea and get it out of our hair, have it miss the islands, and not be an issue. Some models still show that. But the trends have not been the fan or the favorite for that solution because this trough is trending towards being a little bit weaker, this high trending towards being a little bit stronger. The European model can show us the same time, same forecast, same time, Same basic setup, your omega block, your trough, all that stuff, your high blocking it. But notice the subtle differences. The trough is weaker, this high is stronger on the European model. We'll show you that. GFS, Euro, GFS, Euro. The trough is a little bit slower and weaker, and this high is a little bit stronger. What that does is it has a better chance to force Bret more to the west versus leaving that door open for it to turn north. Notice how this 591 contour comes way out here on the European model. See if I can do this here. And then on the GFS, notice how much further back it is. So there's more of a weakness here on the GFS than there is on the Euro. And also notice the storm's position. I'll show you that on the lower end models here. This is the lower levels. Notice how on the GFS, the storm, again, this is all valid at the same time. This is Thursday morning, 995 millibars, showing a pretty healthy storm and how further west it is. And then look at the European value at the same time. Much weaker, 1,006 millibars, and considerably further along, like almost a day ahead of where the GFS has. And this is almost 24 hours of movement right here, difference, but valid at the same time. So both models are telling us this is Thursday morning. This is what they think is going to happen Thursday morning. GFS has it way back here and stronger. European has it that much further and weaker. This has to do with the forward speed and the overall development. The GFS still develops Bret at a pretty healthy pace. The European does not. By Thursday morning, the European still sees this as a weak tropical storm or even a tropical depression, whereas by Thursday, the GFS sees this as a healthy tropical storm knocking on the door of low-grade hurricane. But the GFS has been trending weaker each run. If I take this back 3 or 4 more runs, this is still valid Thursday morning. This was like yesterday. The GFS thought Thursday morning, as in Thursday of this coming week, or the week we're in now, it was going to be at 981, which would be a Category 1 hurricane, at least, almost Category 2, and now it's trended to 995, and you can see how it's trended faster with the storm, too. Notice how it's going further back. Again, we're looking at the same time in the future, but it's showing it catching up with forward speed, and it's weakening the storm with each run. So what this looks like is that the storm is more likely to get into the Caribbean islands. I think there's still worlds where it can turn north. Again, the ensemble models from the GFS still show some realities where that's possible. But more and more members are showing it getting into the northern Antilles, maybe Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, whereas the European model almost universally shows that now. Very few members are pulling this out of this region and moving it northwards. So it looks like the trends are this is going to move into the Caribbean, which then raises the next question. Well, what are the potential follow-on impacts for the U.S.? Now, if you look at the Hurricane Center's cone, you may go, well, crap. I mean, it's a hurricane and it goes through, and then my mind just continues this, and oh no, it's oh no. But you can't do that because the conditions in the Caribbean are going to change pretty dramatically. When Bret gets out of this little favorable pocket it's in right now, you're going to have some major changes. Number one, the drier air is going to pick up. There's much drier air in the Caribbean than there is over the open tropical Atlantic right now. So this is valid on Saturday or late Friday evening. So there's you have a big boundary right here, but you have some more dry air over here, and you have a lot more dry air over the eastern U.S. So you have drier air in the Caribbean. You also have a healthy amount of wind shear. The European model here is showing an upper tropospheric trough coming in. This is at 200 millibars, but this is imparting a healthy amount of wind shear over the region, and Bret would be somewhere in this region most likely by Saturday or late Friday night into Saturday. It'd be right in the part of this trough that's going to be imparting a lot of wind shear on the storm. So and this will continue as Bret moves through islands. So not only do you have drier air, you have higher wind shear, but you also have the islands themselves. Interacting with land is going to be an issue, especially given that Bret looks like it's going to be a fairly small storm. Look at both the GFS and the European runs here on the 850 millibar flow. This is not a very big storm. I mean, even on the satellite presentation, I mean, it's not tiny, but it's not big either. I mean, the time of year is not going to let it be a very huge storm. And these smaller storms are much more susceptible to terrain and other things like that. And let me also add that the storm moving to the west is going to be moving at a pretty good clip. 21 miles an hour is a good clip. And the models may be overestimating how much it can strengthen given that fast forward speed. If storms move too fast in one direction, they have a hard time intensifying. They need to move, like they like to move in like the 10 to 15, 18 mile an hour range is like the sweet spot. You go too slow and you suck up all the warm water. You go too fast and you can't like it's almost like if you were running, you were stumbling like over yourself, and like you have to slow down to kind of catch your balance. It's almost kind of like that. They run too fast, they kind of start to stumble. So you also have that, and it's still June, which that is going to play into this. This isn't August, it's not September, it's still June. So My advice is we need to pump the brakes on any doom and gloom for the eastern U.S. But the islands, the Caribbean islands, especially the Northern Antilles, the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, all need to be watching this very carefully. There could be tropical storm and/or hurricane watches and warnings going up sometime in the middle to later part of this week. Again, it looks like Thursday night into Friday morning would currently be the timing, but that could also change if Brett slows down or even speeds up. So they need to be watching carefully, but it's got a long ways to go before it would be any issue for the eastern U.S. It's got to get through all these islands. It's got to get through a lot more wind shear and dry air. So don't just continue this cone in your mind and go, oh crap, that's not exactly what we're looking at here. But it is going to be tracked. We're going to be following along. The Hurricane Center is probably going to send out the hurricane hunters. They'll be going out there to investigate it. We're going to get some more data, and we're going to see how that trough is playing through, and we're going to take it as it comes. But right now, we do have TD3, which is soon to be Brett, and we have another one following it we're going to watch. And the islands here need to be watching this carefully this week. Eastern U.S., just keep an eye on it. It's not a big deal. And it's the month of June. You should have your hurricane plan and supplies ready to go regardless. Even if Brett defies all the odds and comes over and gives someone a bad day, we need to be ready. So that's what I got for you guys anyway on your morning update. We'll be following along all week. So as always, guys, thanks for watching and have a good one.